Lord, there's so many things that I want to thank you for. Lord, I thank you for your grace. I thank you for your mercy, God. I thank you for your love. Thank you for favor, oh God. God, if I had 10,000 tongues, I couldn't say enough thank yous, and I couldn't praise you enough. So in this song, I'll simply tell you I love you. And God, I thank you for everything you've done. Lord, there's so many things that you've done for me. Blessings unconditional, they seem to overtake me. Your hand of mercy proving faithful and true. Jesus, how can I express my thanks to you for your grace and kindness, oh agent of days. I'll give you thanks, oh Lord, now and always. Oh, I just want to say thank you for your love. Thank you for the blood. Thanks to you for all of the times that you brought me through. Lord, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your grace. Thank you, Lord, for keeping me safe. Thanks to you that I can share the good news of a Savior, to give someone a reason just to tell you thanks. Oh Lord, yeah, thank you, Lord. Lord, it's not enough to give a simple praise to the one who has blessed me in so many ways. Nothing I could say or do could really show my gratitude to you, Lord. One God, one love, one faith. To you I give you praise. Three blessed Trinity, you mean so much to me. And you showered me with love, even when I turned away. Lord, I can never repay you, so I'll just say I just want to say thank you for your love. Thank you for the blood. Thanks to you for all of the times that you brought me through. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your grace. Thank you, Lord, for keeping me safe. Thanks to you that I can share the good news of a Savior, to give someone a reason just to tell you for your love. Lord, I thank you for the blood. Thanks to you for all of the times that you brought me through. Lord, I thank you for your grace. Lord, for keeping me safe. And I can share the good news of a Savior, to give someone a reason just to tell you thanks. Oh Lord, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. What a day, what an hour, what a time to be alive in this moment in history. And as we're coming to you today, this day, we're in the Easter time. We're a few days away from what the world does annually in terms of celebrating what we call Easter. And it does something to me. It's very meaningful to me. It's a reminder for me. But every day is Easter when we are able to embrace God's point of view about everything. Every day becomes what Easter time. Every day becomes a resurrection. Every day becomes a brand new moment to let our light shine. Every day become a moment to prove um, that we are the substance and we are the evidence of things hoped for. We are the promised seed. We are what those uh, who in many lifetimes ago could see far out in the distance, but they did not experience it. They could have experienced it, but they did not experience it. But they saw way off in the future when there will come a time when humanity will come into an awareness of the truth of who they are. And we are that promised seed here in 2022. Thank you so much. Like the song said, thank you for your love. Thank you for your love. And all of the time that your love has what brought us through, all the time that love, when we didn't even know it, love was carrying us. Our reality was carrying us. Our loving Father was nurturing us the whole time, even in our unknowing. And I'm just so happy, 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 happy. Thank you so much. My name is Oliver Blue, if you didn't know it, and I am your temporary guide on the side. And today we're going to be looking at Workbook Lesson 93 from A Course in Miracles. And I just need to respond here. And it just gives me just goosebumps to be sitting in this chair, spending time with those that will review these recordings. and so here we are again. And today we're going to be taking another giant step. I mean, every step now seems like since we come off this second review, you know, the process of transformation is like saying, okay, it's time to move forward, to advance forward. And each lesson seemed to be a giant step into our experience of more freedom and more liberality. And it's a giant step in our installing this new thought system. And it is just amazing the impact it is having on the lives of those that are involved. And if you're listening to this recording or this live and you don't realize that there's been 92 lessons that have gone before tonight's lesson, don't worry. These lessons, like I said before, are all encompassing. So what I say in this lesson will encompass everything that I said in all previous lessons. Believe me, this is how consistent and how intertwined these lessons and these training, this mind training is. It's the way that it's put together. And so sit back, relax, and enjoy. As tonight we're going to talk about light and joy and peace. We'll talk about light, joy, and peace, which are all virtues, which are all attributes of reality. Light and joy and peace. It's all a part of the nature of life. These are not separate qualities, but these are all qualities that are uh, intertwined together. And we can put all of these qualities that we talk about, love and joy and peace and happiness, we'll put them all under the banner of what? Reality, our reality, that which is real, which can't be threatened. And so tonight's lesson says, light and joy and peace abides in me. Light, joy, and peace abides. When something abides, that means what? It rests in. It's a resting place. So the attributes of light and joy and peace finds its resting place in us, in me. And when we're talking about the me, we're talking about not the me that we made, but we're talking about that me or the I that is conscious, that is aware, that's made in the image and likeness of his creator, and that what the creator created. That's the me that we're talking about. That's where light and joy and peace abides. Not in our body identification, but it abides what? In the me that is unchangeable, in the me that existed prior to me being formed in my mother's womb. The I or the me that existed before I or me or you were formed in your mother's womb. That's where what? This love, that's where this light and this joy and peace abides. It rests in what the nature of that I or that I am, which God created. And so let's just see. It's a lot said here, so we're going to get right into it. Okay? So it says, light and joy and peace abide in me. So this idea for this lesson is a God idea. If you ask a natural man, where does light and joy and peace abide? A natural man would hesitate to say that it abided in him. He would just say, well, it's available. It's out in the ether. It's out there somewhere. But the idea for today says that it abides in me, or it abides in you. So you think, or we think, that we are the home of evil, darkness, and sin. Now, this is the opening statement in this lesson about light and joy and peace. It says, we currently think in our old way of thinking, in our self that we made, in the ego self, the self that we made, this body identity self that humanity made. It says that we think that we are the home of evil, darkness, and sin. That's the condition of a mind that's separated from his creator. It creates a thought system that we say is the ego thought system. And in that ego thought system, we think, or the mind tells us that we are the home of what? Evil, darkness, and sin. That's what your mind will tell you. That is what a separated mind will say to you. That's what the critical voice will say. That's what all the chattering that goes on in our mind. It tells us what, because of what we did, you're the home of what? Evil, darkness, and sin. You know what you did, so you're the home of what? Evil, darkness, and sin. What do you think that comes from? That doesn't come from the voice that speaks from God. That will come from the voice of the ego that speaks from this made self that we created, believing in separation. This is the way it will talk to you. This is the way it will think, and this is the way it will speak to you. It says you think you are the home of evil, darkness, and sin. That's a common statement that is made, and all the separated cells have the ability to pick up on this voice, to pick up on this statement at given times in their life. You are the home of evil, darkness, and sin. That's how it talks to you. That's how the ego talks to all of us. It says, we think if anyone could see the truth about us, that they would what? They would be repelled. They would what? Not want to have anything to do with us. This is based on the perception that we have of ourselves from a place of separation. This is where what? This is part of the what? This is part of the self-concept that we have of ourselves. If people thought, or if people knew if people knew the truth about us, they would repel from us. It says, recoiling from us as if from a poisonous snake. And this is the ego talking to you. This is how the ego talks to you. It says, we think if what is true about us were revealed to others, we would be stuck with horror so intense that we would rush to death by our own hands, living on after seeing this being impossible. So in this first paragraph here, the lesson is telling us that this is the voice that speaks for the ego, that communicates to our made self. This self that we create made, that's not in the image and likeness of God. It has a thought system and it has a voice, and this is what it thinks and this is how it speaks. And we all know about this critic and this chatter that goes on, that sometimes we lock in on, we focus in on all the negative messages, all the judgment, all the guilty statements. It's almost like our self is out to destroy us. The way it talks to us sometimes. It calls us no good. It calls us, unworthy. It calls us, all kinds of names. And if you've never been in a religious community, you probably are saved by the bell or saved from hell. Because if you've been conditioned in a religious community, then you got all of this, you got all of that on top of the natural critical voice that speaks to us, called the ego voice. And then you add the religious ideas of separation in on that, the fear-based theology, and you could be a mess. And so this is just sharing how the ego talks, how the ego thinks. And so when we're not aware of who we are, and so our focus is on this false identity. And this is the messages that we hear. And the ego always speak first, and it always speak loud. That's why it's sometimes not good to go on your first instinct. Because as we move into this process of transforming the way we think, we're going to learn more and more about, the nature of our spirit, the nature of reality, which there's a voice that speaks for reality. But it's quiet and it's still and it's gentle and it's loving. And many times that's not what speaks first. It usually wait until the ego finishes it's rambling, it's shrieking noise, it's judgments, it's guilty statements. It usually waits. And then as we get quiet, when the ego quiets down, we hear that still small voice, that loving voice. Let's say, no, everything's okay. You can settle down. The ego has spoken to us and created a state of anxiety. And initially we only see the worst. We only see that Humpty Dumpty can't be put back together again. That's what the ego tells us. That Humpty Dumpty has fallen off the wall and broken into millions and millions of pieces. And like they say, all the king horses and all the king men could not put Humpty back together again. That's the sound of the ego. That's the message of the ego. And it usually speaks first and it speaks loudest when we are confronted with different situations and circumstances and conditions in life. And when we're not disciplined in our minds, when we've been trained to allow our minds to wander, the mind will automatically wander into the chamber of the ego with all its wranglings, with all this idea of evil, darkness, and sin, with all this ideas of fear and trepidation. And we think it's real. So we begin to act upon the voice that speaks for separation. And it only brings on more anxiety, more confusion. But what we've been learning and being trained to do here for these first 93 days is to learn to understand that there is a difference between that which is real and that which is not real. We have to know the difference. To not know the difference, we're going to gravitate to that which is not real. And that which is not real is not in our best interest. It doesn't even exist. As the Course says, that which is not real doesn't exist. But that which is not real, somehow it has a voice, it has a thought system, and it sounds good. And because it speaks first, we think it's the way to go. But when we examine the content of what it's saying, we examine the content of what it's thinking, and we compare or align it with the truth, it doesn't line up. It does not line up. It is basically the opposite of what our reality is. It's the opposite of what truth is in many cases. It's the exact opposite of our reality. It's like it's an attack on us. The voice of the ego is an attack on us to bring us into a place of guilt and judgment and fear, so that we can be traumatized, so we can be imprisoned, so we can be without peace, seemingly without peace, without love, without happiness, without joy, without a solution. All it presents us is problems, and that the problem is out of hand. It's going to get out of hand. It's going to be terrible for us. That's how that voice speaks. And you're very familiar with it if you've been on this planet any length of time. If you've been conditioned by the thinking of this world. So it starts out this beautiful lesson of light and joy and love by talking about evil, darkness, and sin. See, the counterfeit. And so it says, these are beliefs so firmly fixed. See, these are belief systems. These are paradigms. These are habitual ways of thinking and listening that are firmly fixed, that it is difficult to help us see that they are based on nothing. These ideas are so firmly fixed in the historical experiences of humanity that have been passed down from generation to generation. So firmly fixed in the teaching and the training of separation. These ideas, these belief systems, these limited belief systems, these belief systems that lack love, and lack what? Joy. They lack light and joy and peace. But it says these are beliefs that are firmly fixed, that it is difficult to help us to see that they are based on nothing. They're based on unreality, which is nothing. That which is real does not exist. It says that we have made mistakes. It's quite obvious that we've all made mistakes. We've all what? We've all judged wrong. We've all missed it. It's quite obvious that we all have made mistakes. It says that we have sought salvation in strange ways. We all have. and, and the strange ways always involve what? The body. It always involves what? Something that we do to preserve what? The body. Because what? When you think that you are the body, you have to preserve the body. Because without the body, there's no life. That's the thought process of the ego. That's what happens, and that's the way we think when we embrace a body identification. And so he says that we have sought what? Salvation in strange ways. That we have been deceived. These are all mistakes that we've made. These are all mistakes that we have made. That we've sought salvation in strange ways. And we've already learned that what only God's plan for what salvation will work. But we've sought it in other ways. It says, here's another mistake. We have been deceived. We have bought into what? We have bought into the deception of separation. We have bought into the idea that we are what? We're something that we're not. We have bought into the idea that we are not as God created us. That something is wrong with us. Something needs fixing. Something is broken. Something has gone awry. That's a deception. Because in reality, what? We remain as God created us. Here's another. Okay, so here's another. Here's another mistake that we've made. So we've sought salvation in strange ways. We've been deceived. We are deceiving and afraid of foolish fantasies and salvage dreams. We've deceived ourselves and we've deceived others. And we are afraid of fantasies and salvage dreams. So fantasies and salvage dreams, we know that fantasies and dreams are what? They're not real. But here it says what? We have deceived and afraid of foolish fantasies and salvage dreams that are not even real. And we have what? Bowed down to idols made of dust. We have bowed down to idols made of dust. What is he talking about? It's talking about what? The way we perceive the objects in this world. The way we perceive what? The bodies that we see in this world. We have bowed down to these what? These things that are what? Idols. In the sense that what? They are here for us. We're not here for them. They wouldn't be here if it wasn't for us. Nothing in this world would exist if it wasn't for us. And so what? We are the cause of them. But we bow down to them, hoping, but trying to get something. As though they're here, we're here because of them. So we got it all turned backwards. And it says what? It says all this is true by what we now believe. So all this is a result of the way we believe. See, all of this came out of a what the Course calls a tiny mad idea of separation, where we at some point believed that we were separate from God, that we are a separate entity from God, a separate being, of individual self. And it created all of this. It created this whole universe. It created all these 7.8 billion bodies that are alive now, and all the billions of bodies that have already passed through this way. Came from that tiny mad idea. It created all the systems of the world. All this is a mad idea. Because think about it. God is light, and in him there is no darkness. So if God created a world, it wouldn't be falling apart. If God created a world, it wouldn't fall apart. And God has created a world. It's called heaven. And heaven is intact. So who created this spinning top that we're on? It was you and me. Collectively, humanity. We created the world in the image of separation. We could only have done it. Why? God knows nothing about separation. God knows nothing about what? Imperfection. So these are part of what they call the savage dreams and strange fantasies. We fantasize of being separation. We fantasize of being separate from God. We have strange dreams of what? Being separated from God and from each other. So they would have to be in fantasies and dreams, because it's not a reality. The reality is there is God and there's nothing else. And that God only extended himself. God only created the one thing out of his own self. And when he extended his creation, he called his creation himself. He called it creation what I am. And so I am is just as what? Just as God is. And God is just as what I am. They're same, one and the same. They're not two entities. There's, we got this idea of the Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That's kind of in traditional religion. And it gives the idea that, there's three different entities. Separation with separate functions and all that. But see, that only promotes what? Separation. To reality, there is but the one. God is, and that's it. God is our only reality. God is the only thing that exists. But the one thing that we are sure of is that we do exist. The one thing that we are sure of is what? That we are conscious. That we are what? We are aware. That we are alive. We're sure of that. We don't know why we're alive. Or we may not know for what. But we do know what? That we are alive, that we are aware, that we are conscious, that we are sure of. We may not be sure of anything else, but you are sure that if you are listening to me tonight, today, whatever time you may be listening, the one thing that you are sure of is that you are what? Conscious. To be able to what? Hear what I'm saying. To examine what I'm saying. To contemplate what I'm saying, to form an opinion of what I'm saying, to reject what I'm saying, or to embrace what I'm saying, because you're able to do that, to observe what I'm saying, to watch yourself listening to what I'm saying. You're able to do that. Stand outside of yourself and watch this body self listening. So the one thing that you are sure of tonight, or today, or this morning, whenever you're listening, is that you are aware, you are conscious, or that you are alive. And so if you are aware, conscious, and alive, and God is all there is, in reality, then you must be what? A part of God. And you are, and I am. You are part of God. We share the same what? You and God share the same being. There are not two separate beings. It's not you and there's God. but that is just one being. And you share the same being that God is. There's no separation. That's our true identity. That's the self that we're talking about here when we say that light and joy and peace abide in us. Well, it abides in this one self, of one and the self same. The same love and light and joy and peace that abides in God, it abides in you. Or the same light and joy and peace that abides in you, it abides in God. In the one self. In the one self that we share, the I am. And so, today we question the beliefs. Today we question our beliefs. Is what I believe or is what you believe, is it reality? Is it the truth? Or is it the way you've been conditioned? Without any investigation or examination or contemplation on your part. Is it the reality of who you are? Or is it just what you've been taught? Someone told you. Someone in authority that you may look up to and say, well, they should know. But I'm here to say in many cases, humanity doesn't know who they are. And all our lives is teaching it's teaching something. It's teaching a belief system that we have. And if it's based on unreality, we just continue to promote separation. And that's why you see the world it's in the condition that it's in. So today we question this, not from the point of view of what we think, but from a very different reference point. So we're going to lay aside what we think. And we're going to question this from a point of view that is a very different reference point or a very different point of view, from which such idle thoughts are meaningless. So today we're going to examine that voice, that idea of separation, that idea of being evil and dark in sin. We're going to examine that. We're going to question that. We're going to look at that from a point of view that says that these things are what? These things are meaningless. The voice that's speaking these things are meaningless. The things that it's speaking is meaningless. But somehow, somewhere, we have given meaning to them. We've given meaning to them. It says, these thoughts are not according to God's will. So any thought that is not according to God's will are meaningless thoughts. Hey, if God is all there is, God's thoughts is all that there is. And we've learned earlier that all the thoughts of God was placed within his creation. Every thought of God. So we are every thought of God because we are the creation of God. So where do these other thoughts come from? Where do these other ideas come from? As we have said time and time again, they have come from a belief system that is not based on reality. It's based on what? Based on a tiny mad idea that man somehow accomplished his curiosity of what it would be separate from God. And we did it. We accomplished it. We were able to what? We were able to knock Humpty Dumpty off the wall and break him into thousands of pieces. And it did not happen. So the point of view tonight is where we question that nothingness that keeps trying to present itself to us. And so these thoughts are not according to God's will. These weird beliefs, so the Course calls them weird beliefs, the home of evil, darkness, and sin. Those are weird beliefs. Which have caused us to what? Make mistakes about what? Looking for salvation in strange ways, being deceived and deceiving. And being afraid of foolish fantasies and salvage dreams, to the point that we end up bowing down to what? Idols. You remember, that's what the prodigal son ended up in the what? Pig pen with the pigs, what? Eating their food. In order for him to eat the pig food, he had what? He had to bow down, he had to get on his knees. That's just symbolic of what happened to the collective mind of humanity. That we have what? Lowered ourselves to the point where we get down on our knees and worship the idols, like it says. That we bow down to idols made of what? Dust. All this is true about the way we believe now. From a tiny, little simple idea of separation happened to Adam and Eve. It's another symbol, a symbolic way to communicate that. They was living in bliss. They was in the Garden of Eden, where there was gold and there was what? Rivers and plants and animals. Everything was what? Everything in the garden was hunky-dory, nothing missing, nothing broken. Everything was A-okay. and they even had what? The God Almighty living and visited them every day. And he said one day, the tiny mad idea entered into the mind of Adam and Eve, who began to what? Question what God said. He said, has God not said? See, he began to question what God said. And that's what happens with us. We begin to question our own nature. So we begin to say, well, I'm broke. I'm sick. I'm afraid. I'm fearful. I'm weak. I'm hurting. I'm not certain. I have doubt. We begin to doing the same thing, questioning what God said. And in that tiny mad idea, we're able to create a whole scenario by which what we end up what? In the pig pen. On our knees, bowing down to what? To the pigs. Asking the pig, can we have some of their food? See how this thing got turned around? All this happens from a tiny mad idea. All this happens from the way we think. All this happened to an entire humanity. Wow. These thoughts are not according to the will of God. These are weird beliefs. That God does not share with us. Why? Because they're not God's thoughts. These thoughts are what given to us as a result of what? As a result of what? Questioning reality. Having doubt about what? Our true self. It said it does not, but God does not share these with us. This is enough to prove that these thoughts are what? These thoughts are wrong. But we do not what? We do not perceive or understand or interpret these thoughts that this is so. We don't perceive them as being wrong, but we perceive them as being right. So some of us really do see ourselves as what? The home of evil, darkness, and sin. And we deserve to be punished. And so we're what? We're looking around every corner to wonder what? When we're going to be punished. And then we have what? Religions that tells us what? You're going to be punished. You're going to be what? You're going to suffer. God can't use you unless you suffer. God can't use you unless you go through some stuff. God can't use you unless you unless you hit rock bottom. And then the ultimate suffering is what? You're going to die. Your body's going to die. And it might what? It might end up what? In eternal flames. That's what we tell ourselves. We build whole stories and religions around that. It says it right here. These are beliefs are so firmly fixed that it's difficult to help us to see that they are what? Based on nothing. But I understand how we can get here. I know I got to that point in my life. I got to the point in my life where I felt as though I deserved to be punished because I was holding on to what? These foolish thoughts. He calls them what? Weird beliefs. I used to what? Embrace these weird beliefs. And I got to a point in my life where what? I knew that I was going to be punished. That's how much I believed it. And guess what? I created a scenario through that belief system. That I went through what? Pain and anguish. Great pain and anguish. Because the world will show back to you what you're thinking. So it creates a scenario for what? For you to be punished. And God has nothing to do with that. Nothing to do with it at all. It's not a God idea. It's not the thought that God shared with us. So we have to examine. We have to question. Like it says, we have to question from a different point of view. It says today we question this, not from the point of view of what you think, but from a what? Very different reference point from which such idle thoughts are meaningless. That's a meaningless thought. God is not the punisher of humanity. God is not the punisher of anything of one. God is love. God is light, and in him there is no darkness. Or in her. But God is not a him or a her. God is a being. In the being of God, what? There is no darkness. Therefore, there is no what? There's no punishment. There's no what? There's no requirement. God doesn't require anything of us. There is no sacrifice, as we've been taught. Even Hebrews tell you what? That the sacrifices that was made under the old system of the law, they said they were meaningless. They couldn't do anything. They didn't have the power to save. That wasn't his idea. That was not God's idea. That was humanity's idea. So God is not asking you to sacrifice anything. God doesn't need anything. Reality doesn't need anything. Reality has everything. So that's a weird idea. God does not require anything of you. For the being of God to require anything of you is to say that God made you incomplete. And God didn't make you incomplete. Because for God to make you incomplete, that means God would have to be what? Incomplete. And if God was incomplete, yes, God would what? God would be just like an ego that needs what? Needs something. He needs something to project on. He's something to what? To what? To to project its what? It's what? Bad feelings on. God would be like man, needy. Like they say, well, God gets all the glory. Well, that's a man-made idea. Like God needs glory. God is glory. And that also suggests that what there's inequality, that we're not equal with God. If he gets all the glory. No, we share in God's glory. We are to the praise of his glory, as Ephesians 1 says. I like talking like this. We're getting to the bottom of things, man. That's why I like this lesson. That's why I'm here every day, because we seem to be getting to the root cause. It says, why would you not be overjoyed to be assured that all the evil that we think that we did was never done? So what it's saying here is that all of that we thought that we did, we have not done. It says, why wouldn't you be overjoyed to learn this? And that all our sins are what? Nothing. That there is no sin. In dreams and in fantasies that are unreal, there are no sins. Because what? They're dreams and fantasies. They're not based on the truth. So the content of our activities doesn't change who or what we are in truth. They're just content of activities. They're not reality. So when we find out that what we have not sinned, that there is no sin, there's only what God, then why wouldn't we be rejoiced or overjoyed over that we have not sinned, even though we thought we did? It says it right here. Why would you not be overjoyed to be assured that all the evil that you thought you did was never done? That all sins are nothing. That we are as pure and as holy as we were created. And that light and joy and peace abide in us. Why wouldn't we not be overjoyed to hear this message? That we're not sinners, that we have not sinned, that we cannot sin, and that we are the holy home of God, just the way he created us. And that we are light. We are joy. We are peace. And it remains with us as we were created. Why would not we be overjoyed for that message? Why? Ask ourselves that question. It says, our image of ourselves cannot withstand the will of God. So the image of ourselves that we maybe brought to this mind training journey that we're on, to where we thought of ourselves as a body identification, as a sinner, deserving of punishment, home of evil, darkness, and sin. That may be the way we came to these lessons. But here we become aware of the truth of who we are. That we are what? We are the holy home of God. And light and joy and peace abide in us. That's the exchange that we're making in this what? Mind training. Because all the belief and the belief systems and the paradigms that we have built, that we have embraced as our very own truth, we're finding out that they're the very own lie. It was not true. It was nothingness. It was based on what? Based on the beliefs in separation that never occurred. That we've always been what? The holy home of God. We've always been what? In the heart of God. We've never left our home in the heart of God. We've never left heaven because we've never left God, because God is all there is. And if God exists and God has life and God is consciousness and God is awareness, and we are that also because we are experiencing that, and we are experiencing what? The very life of God itself that we share. We become what? Overjoyed that it was all a dream. It was all a fantasy. It was all a conditioning that was implanted in us by our culture, by our society, by those that had charge over us, and by systems that have been built and handed down from generation to generation. That mankind was what? Mankind was not one with the divine. And that we have to wait someday off in the future to determine our future. Everything was put on hold. We was taught that everything's been put on hold until the judgment day. And I'm going to talk about that in one of these lessons. Everything's going to be put on hold till judgment day. What is judgment day? There's a whole section here on that. We're going to learn about that. Everything's put on hold till what? The second coming. There's a whole section here on the second coming. We're going to learn about that. We're going to get that straightened out too. It was all based on a lie. Yesterday said, ask yourself the question. Well, yesterday's lesson, or I think it was yesterday. It says what? Let us ask ourselves the question. Is it God's strength, or is it my fear? What's real here? Is it my fear, or is it God's strength? It says what we think about ourselves cannot withstand the will of God. It says ultimately it's the will of God that shall prevail. And the will of God is what? The will of God is from everlasting to everlasting. It's that which has always was, which is, and that which is to come. Is that God is the only reality there is. And God is life, and God is light, and God is love, peace, and joy, and happiness. It says what? It says that we think that this is death, but this is life. We think that the will of God is what? Death. But this is life. The will of God is life, not death. And we think we are destroyed, but we are saved. We think we're what? We think that what? We're due punishment, but we're not due punishment. Our inheritance is innocence. Our inheritance is innocence, because we are what? We are guiltless. We're sinless. It doesn't exist, only in fantasies and dreams. So this world itself would have to be what? A fantasy and a dream. That is promoting what? Separation. And it is. But it's happening what? Under God's watch. It's happening under your watch. But do we see God getting nervous because of all of the what? All of the what? The so-called evil, darkness, and sin? Do you see God getting nervous? No. Why? He knows it's only but fantasy and a dream. Did God get nervous when a body ceased to be alive? No. Why? Because he knows that's not who his child is. It's not a body. It's not a body. And so the self that it says, so the self that we made is not the Son of God. The self that we made based on separation, body identification, based on a belief system that is not real. It says that's not the Son of God, the self that we made. It says, therefore, this self means nothing. Nothing from nothing, what leaves nothing. So the self that we made, that we call evil, darkness, and sin, the self that we made, that was full of errors. God said it doesn't mean anything because we made that. It's not what he created. He says, so it means nothing. He says, therefore, this self does not exist at all. That which is real is not threatened. That which is unreal does not exist. See? So the self we make does not really exist. It only exists in what? Fantasies and dreams. He said it doesn't mean nothing. It is neither bad nor good. It's nothing. It's not even bad or it's not even good. It's nothing. What we make is not bad or good. God said it's nothing because it's not according to what he created. Man, he is sure of himself or itself. God is sure of his being. God is absolutely 100% confident in what he created. And he won't what? He can't be deceived by anything that we do or say. He won't be deceived by a what? By a tiny mad idea of separation. It's like he watches children get what? Deceived and deceiving, like it says. Like those of you who have kids and you watch your kids, you can see the deception that they're in. You can see it, right? And they think you correct. They think you were blind to their what they're thinking. But you can see the deception that they're in. Likewise, God can see the deception that his children are in. Well, he's not moved by what? The deception. Like you're not moved by your child's deception. You let him what? You let him run his course. But you're not moved. He doesn't convince you that he's right. He insists on what? He insists on being right. So what? He invents you to have to let the child go. What? So they can learn the lesson. But all the time, you know what? They'll be back. Why? Because what? The path that they're on is nothing. They won't find what they're looking for on that path. It's not there. And so it says, therefore, this self does not exist at all. And anything it seems to do and think, it says it's neither good nor bad. It is unreal and nothing more than that. So the self that we make is unreal. It's unreal. He said it does not battle with the Son of God. It does not hurt him, nor attack his peace. It has not changed creation, nor reduced eternity's sinlessness to sin and love to hate. What power can this self you made possess when it would what? Contradict the will of God? So it's saying in here, the self that we make and all the energy we put into what? Creating our own self, the separated body, mind, self. Creating what? Creating a self for the reputation, a self what? A self-made self that's out in the world looking for what? looking for love, looking for joy, looking for happiness in all the places that God didn't place it. God knows He only placed it within us. And we're looking all over the place for these things, for these experiences, for identity. And God said, what? You are the thing. You are it. And so it says, none of these things has changed creation. We remain as God created us. It says our sinlessness is guaranteed by God. It says what? Our sinlessness or our innocence is guaranteed by God. It's a guarantee that God made, that He knew what He made, that can't be unchanged. God knows that what He created, and He said what? It cannot be unchanged. As hard as we try. And there's been thousands and thousands and thousands of years of humanity trying to change what God created, only to be what? Disappointed. Only to what? Only to see all of the efforts come up as what? Nothingness. Even the life that we're in right now. Some of us are 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, maybe even 80. And we have put a lot of effort into being something that we're not. But God has not what? He's not been moved one iota. The being of God has not moved one iota by anything that we've done. Because He knows that what? The self that we made can't change anything. He guaranteed that what He made is unalterable. He guarantees it. And every being that had what? Placed their foot on this earth has tried to what? Change that. Except for one. Except for one. The one that appeared here in what? Person of God. And said, well, I'm the Savior of the world. To show us not what's possible, but what's impossible. And what's impossible is for us to what? Change ourselves. We remain what? As God created us. And He guarantees that. That's why God guarantees salvation. Salvation is what? The guarantee that God's established that we are what? Unalterable. It is the guarantee or it's the promise that God made that all of us will at some point wake up to our reality. He guarantees it. Hebrews said by two immutable things. God guarantees it by a promise and an oath. And when He could swear by no greater, what? He swore by Himself. See, in blessings, He has blessed us. Meaning what? What He made is a blessing. What He made is what? What He made is Himself. I mean, what He created is Himself. I told a guy the other day, I said, what? He made a misstep. He made a misspoke. He misspoke out of place. And because of this learning, you know what my response to him was? I said, don't worry about it, brother. I said, you can only bless me. Why? Because God, what? Guarantees it. You can't curse me. You can only bless me. Why? Because I'm the blessed of the Lord. He's the blessed of the Lord. We all are the blessed of the Lord. This is not some specialness here. All this is humanity's gift. And it requires that we wake up from the dream of separation to notice the gift. to notice that you are what? You are a gift to the world. You're a savior of the world. You're the light of the world. All of us are. And we can't change that. We could what? We cannot recognize it, but we can't change it. We can ignore it, but we can't alter that. You can put what? You can put lipstick on a pig, but what? It's still a pig. You can write the big S on our back. Sinner, but we're still what? Innocent. It says our sinlessness is guaranteed by God. Over and over, this must be repeated until it is accepted. Notice now he said over and over and over and over again. We need to what? Repeat this. Our sinlessness is guaranteed by God. Why? Because we've been told we've been sinners for a long time. It says over and over and over and over and over again. We need to repeat this until it is accepted. It is true. Our sinlessness is guaranteed by God. It's stated again. Our sinlessness or our what? Innocence. I like to say it that way. Put a positive spin on it. Our innocence is guaranteed by God. Nothing can touch it or change what God created as eternal. The self that we made, evil and full of sin, is meaningless. Because what? It was made in fantasies and in dreams. Our sinlessness is guaranteed by God. That's the third time it's made this statement. And light and joy and peace abide in us. Our innocence is guaranteed. You are the innocent home of God. I am. All humanity is. We've been deceived to think differently. And it has brought so much suffering and pain and anguish to the human race. It's got to reverse. It is reversing. As each son and daughter of God wakes up from the dream of evil, darkness, and sin, to recognize the gift of innocence, to recognize the gift of sinlessness, to recognize the gift things begin to reverse. It starts individually and then it becomes collective. There's a critical mass of people that are waking up fast and every day in this season. A critical mass. And it only takes one. But what if a critical mass of humanity stands as a shining light to a dark world and shines away the dreams and the fantasies of darkness, shines away the fantasy of evil and sin consciousness? What if? And that is what's happening. That's our job. That's our purpose. It says, the self we made evil and full of sin is meaningless. Our sinlessness is guaranteed by God, and life and joy and peace abide in us. Salvation requires the acceptance of but one thought. That's it. Simple. Salvation is so simple. The salvation, the plan of God, only the plan of God would work. Only God's plan for salvation would work. And it says what? It requires only the acceptance of one thought. Notice now, it said it only requires the acceptance of one thought. So every human being is what? One thought away from waking up. Every human being is what? One thought away from waking up. One thought. And you know of the many religions out here that have all these requirements for salvation and to remain saved once you are. You can't hardly count on your hand what it takes according to the fear-based theology that's still out here. But here it's saying what? Salvation requires what? The acceptance of but one thought. And that one thought is you are as God created you. That's the only thought that is required for you to accept. That no changes have been made. That you remain intact. You remain at home with God. You remain who God created you to be. You remain as the light and the joy and the peace that abides in you. That was what? A part of your creation. It says you are as God created you, not what you made of yourself. That's the only thought that is required. The one thought for salvation. Salvation being what? Guaranteed by God. So this one thought you will encounter. All humanity will encounter this one thought because God guaranteed that every humanity will wake up. Just one thought. Just one thought. This whole training we're going through, if we can embrace this one thought, we don't have to what? We don't have to go through no more training. It's all in this one thought. You remain as God what created you. And God created you before this world was. And the way God creates is merely to what? Extend himself or itself or its being. So what God creates is his own being. And that's what God created. And he called it his own being, I am. And that's the life that flows in you and me. We are the only creation of God. Your awareness of this, your consciousness of this is the guarantee. That means you'll never lose your what? Awareness. The body might what? Finish its course and lay down. And never to what? Never to have any motion or energy again. But who you are will always be conscious. Who you are will always be aware. You will always be aware. You have always been aware. The same awareness that was with you at 1 and 2 and 5 and 10 is the same awareness that's with you right now. That you what? That you can stand apart from this world and observe it. Hey. That you can what? You stand apart. That means you're not this world. You're not what you see. But you are the what? You are the observer of all things. You notice everything in the room that you're in. You notice yourself sitting in that chair watching this lesson. Well, who's watching the lesson? And who's what? Who's observing you watching the lesson? Which eye are we talking about? The observer or the observed? the subject or the object? Which one are you? You're both. You're both. Why? Because you're a creator just like your father. And so that means that everything you see is what? Perfect. That means that everything you see is what? Light. That means that everything you see is what? It's all the same. It's just different forms, but it's all the same. So you don't see, you don't get caught up in the different forms. You know that it's all here what? To benefit you. It's all here to what? Serve you. We don't serve it, it serves you. Why? You're the master. You are the master. You like your father. So we don't get nervous, we don't get anxious, we don't become doubtful, fearful, we don't become worried about what's going to happen, whether we're going to have enough, whether we're going to be enough, whether we're going to be supported, whether we have the ability to do it. We don't worry about those things anymore. Why? We're the master. It's going to be the way we say it. It's like God told Adam, you name all the animals. And Adam named the animals. So we name every situation, every circumstance and condition. What are we naming it? What are we naming it? Are we naming it scarcity and lack, fear and sickness and disease? Or are we calling it blessed? Are we blessing it? Because we're the blessed. And we're the blessor, like our Father. God is teaching us how to operate from our true self. And not from our false self. So he says, whatever evil we may think we did, we are as God created us. So whatever we dreamed of, whatever we fantasized ourselves to be, there's evil, darkness, and sin. He said what? It doesn't matter. We are as God created us. It says whatever mistakes that we think that we've made, it says what? The truth about us is unchanged. Because we're unalterable. Regardless of what mistake that we have made. Or what error we have made. Wow, errors can be corrected. See, the concept of sin, it can't be corrected. It needs a sacrifice. But with the idea of an error, what error can simply be corrected by a shift in perception. We all remain as God created me. That's the correction to the error. That's the correction to the mistake. That's the response to the ego, who speaks loud and first, saying you are the home of what? Darkness. What it says that you're the home of what? Evil, darkness, and sin. Well, the response to that is what? I remain as God created me. God guarantees that. He will back you. She will back you. Or the being of God will back or support the reality that you remain as God created you. So that should be our response to every challenge in life. That should be our response to every ego thought, every chatter, every voice that speaks judgment and condemnation, everything that talks or walks or try to express that we are different than what God created us to be. The response to that is simple. I remain as God created me. So whatever mistake that I've made, the truth about me is unchanged. Creation is eternal and unalterable. You getting this? Reality is what? Reality is what? Eternal and unalterable. Remember our definition of reality. That is what? Eternal is unalterable. It's unchanging. It has no beginning. It has no end. It merely is. It says creation is eternal and unalterable. Our sinlessness is guaranteed by God. That's the fourth time we've said it. It says we are and will forever be exactly as we were created. Nothing can what? Separate us, or nothing can change us. That's what Romans says. Nothing can separate us from the love. What is that love? That love is the guarantee that what? We are changeless just like our Father. That we are of the essence of our Father. That I and our Father are one. That when you've seen us, you've seen the sinless, guiltless Father. This is what a real child of God what know of himself. So when people say, well, we're a child of God, but see themselves as separate beings, they don't quite understand quite yet. We're still at the elementary stage. We're talking advanced conversation here. We're having an advanced adult conversation here. This is an adult conversation. What we're talking about here, because this causes us to this kind of conversation is what caused me years ago to what? To let go of everything I knew. Because what I knew, it only brought pain and anguish, guilt, judgment, condemnation. It was a religious thought system that I had embraced. But when I came into the awareness of this truth, I saw myself as sinless and guiltless and innocent. Everything changed. Now you understand what I said when I said everything changed for me. And everything changes for you as you embrace what it says. You accept this one thought. Salvation is to accept this one thought. It's only required that you accept the reality that you're what? You're the changeless one. You're the unaltered one. Dreams and fantasies can't change you. They're just experiences that you can have. Mistakes can't what? Undo who you are. Errors can't hold you back. Light and joy and peace abide in us because God put them there. And when God puts something, it remains in place. So God put you here. And you remain what as God created you. Where you find yourself aware of a body that you can use in time and space for the purposes of what? Awakening the entire humanity. God placed you there in a very strategic place. Where you are is perfect. Where you've been has been perfect. Where you're going, what is perfect. Because what is all perfect. It can't be no other way. You are in the fullness of time. You are the fullness of time. Time's been waiting on you to come and what? Be the substance and the evidence. Time has been waiting on you. The earth has been waiting on you. The manifestation of the sons of God is what the earth been waiting for. All humanity has been waiting on you. Because you are the what? Substance of things what hope for. You are the what? You're the evidence of things that's not seen. You are the promised seed. You are the promised seed. I am the promised seed. We are what the Old Testament prophets hoped for. We are what those in the New Testament hope for. It's no longer a hope. We are the reality. We are the reality. We are the substance and we are the evidence that what God said is true. We remain as what God created us. We are that. That's what he meant when he says, "What I am, that." I am. That's what he meant. He said, "I am that I am." And you and me can say, you and I can say, "I am that I am." I remain as God created me. That's what "I am that I am" means. That's what the song meant when I was a child in Presbyterian church. And we used to sing, "As it was in the beginning. It is now and forever shall be. Unchanged, unaltered." That's what it meant. I didn't know what it meant. Now I know what it meant. A world without what? A world without end. Because what? It's a world of eternity. And then it ends by saying, "Amen," or "so be it." Why? Because God guarantees it. God, you guarantee it. You must show, you must prove. God is proving himself as you and me. You are the substance of things hoped for. You are the evidence of things not seen. And God is the guarantee of that. You are the promised seed. You are the bright and shining star. You are to the praise of his glory. You are the mystery that was held back in time past. But now what? It's been made manifest. You are the manifestation of the mystery. Your mystical self. You are that. He said the mystery what was held back. Why was it held back? God wasn't holding it back. What was holding it back? Our acceptance of the reality that we remain as God created us. That's the only thing that could hold that back. But now that we have fully embraced this reality for ourselves, we have accepted the atonement for ourselves. In this moment, we say to God, "God, we are the substance of things hoped for. We are the evidence of things not seen. We are it." And we say, "I am that. I am." We need to embrace this moment. This is a turning point in our training here. And we got so much road to cover. Just think of where we are right now, where we still got 200 and something lessons. And we are here in this moment with this revelation. So we just need to abide in this for a moment. Abide in this light. Abide in this joy. And abide in this peace. Because like the lesson says, should not we be overjoyed if we knew this is what we were? Yes, we should. I am. Oh, I'm overjoyed in this moment. It takes my breath away to see the reality of all humanity to know that the fantasies and the dreams that appear to be real, they are nothing. They mean nothing. All of the history, all of the events and the activities, all of the relationships, all of the sensations that mankind has gone through, all of the emotions, all of the feelings that seem to be so real. None of that has changed one thing. None of that has what altered the thought of God. None of that has replaced what the will of God. Why? Because what we're the substance and the evidence of that in this moment. In this moment, right here, in this moment in time, our acceptance causes time to stand still. It said that what we abide. To abide means to what? Abide means to what? Something that abides is something that what is unmovable. So in this moment, we realize that we are unmovable, unalterable. And so we abide. We have entered into what God calls what the rest for the people of this one being. We rest in God. Mm. Mm. God put us here. The one being that God has put us right here in this moment. This is how God enters into what? The timeless God enters into what? Timelessness as us. And time stops when it meets timelessness. And so that's why we are making this pause. That's why we're having this pause right now, because we are in a moment of timelessness in time. And the will of God is being what? It's being acknowledged. The will of God what? It's being accepted. It's been embraced. It's being experienced. directly, not indirectly, but direct experience. We are having a direct experience. We're not having to go through any priest or any prophet or pastor or teacher. We're having our own what universal experience, which God guarantees. So, Father, we sit in this moment, not as separate selves, not as what, not as not in duality. We sit in this moment in oneness. Holy is our name. Our kingdom has appeared to us. Our will is being done. And heaven and earth has been joined in one, joined as one on earth as it is in heaven. We thank you for giving us this moment, the bread of life, the word of truth, the direct experience of knowing the one being that we share. And we thank you that forgiveness has brought us to what? The doors of heaven. And you make what? You make the final step. You make the final step. So we understand what our elder brother Jesus meant when he said, what? All that the Father has given unto me, I have lost what? I have lost none. And so tonight we declare from this abiding place and space that all that the one being is remains intact. And nothing has been lost. Nothing has been lost. Nothing has been gained. It merely is what it is. And I speak blessings over the listening audience. We thank you for true perception. We now see from your point of view. We see through the eyes of loveliness, radiant aliveness. We see the beauty. We see beauty. In everything. We are the pure in heart. And we see the one being. We are the light of the world. And we let the light shine brightly to every son and daughter comes home. where you would have us be. We feel your presence. Because we're a part of your presence. Mm. Light and joy and peace abide in us. Because the being that you are put them there. So today in our longer exercise period, which would be most profitable if done for the first 5 minutes of each waking hour, begin by stating the truth about our creation. What is the truth about our creation? Light and joy and peace abide in us. Our sinlessness is guaranteed by God. And so we put away our foolish self images and spend the rest of the practice period in trying to experience what God has given us in place of what we have decreed for ourselves. Every waking hour, we declare that light and joy and peace abide in us. And our sinlessness is guaranteed by God. We are what God created or what we made. One self is true, the other is not there. Either what God created or what we made. One of these selves is true, and the other one, what does not exist. It's not there. It says, try to experience the unity of our one self. That our one self is what united. It's not divided. It's not separate. But it's in unity or unison or in oneness. It says try to what? Try to experience. And when it says try, it's not saying that there's an effort to be made. What it's saying is we just need to relax into our reality. Because God's definition of trying is effortlessness. It needs no effort. It is what it is. It needs no propping up. It needs no energy. It just merely is. We merely are. Light and joy and peace. And our sinlessness, which is our innocence, is guaranteed by God. We just need to relax into that. It says, try to appreciate the holiness and the love from which we are created. The wholeness, the completeness. It says try to enter fear. It says, try not to interfere with the self which God created as us by hiding this holiness and this loveliness, this majesty behind the tiny idols of evil and sinfulness that we made to replace it. Let this what? Holiness, let this loveliness come into its own. Just let it be. Here we are. This is us. This loveliness, this holiness, this is us. It abides as us. The light and the joy and the peace abide in us because what? Because it is so. We may not be willing to even be able to use the first 5 minutes of each hour for these exercises. Try, however, to do so when you can today. At least remember to repeat these thoughts each hour. Light and joy and peace abides in us. We are sinless and guaranteed by God. So you make it personal. He said that it abides in me, and that what my sinlessness is guaranteed by God. Then try to devote at least a minute or so to closing your eyes and realizing that this is a statement of truth about us. If a situation arises that seems to be disturbing, quickly dispel the illusion of fear by repeating these thoughts again. So when situations arising that seems disturbing, it says these are what? Illusions of fear. And they need to be what? Quickly dispelled by repeating the idea. Should we be tempted to become angry with someone, tell that someone silently. Notice that it says tell them silently. Do it the way it says. Tell them silently. You not tell them to their face. Tell them silently. Light and joy and peace abide in you. Your sinlessness is guaranteed by God. Because what's true about you is true about all humanity. There's no exception. Even to the one that may seem to be annoying to you. We can do much for the world's salvation today. Notice now. We pull the focus off of ourselves. Now it's on the world. Now that we're okay. See, now that we're healed healers, now we can turn to the world. But the emphasis has to be on us first. The goose has to be healed first before it can produce the golden eggs. And so now that we have ourselves together, we are unified and confident about who we are. It says now we can turn our attention to the world. It says what? It says we can do much today to bring us closer to the part. Bring us closer to the part in salvation that God has assigned to us. Only until we get to this moment that we can be about our assignment and God's plan for salvation. But we must first be healed. We must first accept the atonement for ourselves. We must accept the reality that we remain as God created us. It has to be settled in us first. And now we can turn to a world that is full of evil, darkness, and sin. A world that's dreaming of separation. A world that is fantasizing of punishment. Now we can turn to that world. Why? Because we have the mind of Christ. We have the mind of God. We have the point of view of God. Now we can turn to the world. Not before. Now we can turn to the world as one mind and one heart, as one being. Now we turn to the world. To bring us what? Closer to the part of salvation that what God has assigned to us. And we can do much today to bring what? Conviction to our mind that the idea for today is true indeed. Light and joy and peace abide in me. This has been an absolutely grandiose experience. And I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you was here. You're glad you were here. It's not going to get much better than this. It's going to get more brighter than this, but not much better. It continues to get what? Brighter and brighter. The revelation becomes more what? Direct, because revelation is what? A direct message from what? Our being. So the revelations will become even more direct. The voice that speaks for love will become even more what? Familiar. We'll become more familiar with what? The voice that speaks for love that is within us. But the loveliness, the beauty, the radiant aliveness will only continue to shine brighter and brighter in our life. We begin to see the face of Christ in everything and in everyone. Our innocence becomes what? It becomes our very being. Not that it wasn't before, it's just we become aware of it as our very being. And we begin to experience the freedom, like Jesus said, who the Son sets free is free indeed. So who do we set free? Who do we set free? We set the entire world free of its what? Dreams and fantasies. And it's free indeed. It's innocent. It is sinless. It is guiltless. And that is his salvation. Thank you so much. What a pleasure. What a lesson. We got so many more to go. So we just relax and rest in this along the way of the journey. You know, the further we get down this journey, the further we go up the steps, the less anxiety. And the more peace. And the more what? Joy. And the more loveliness. So we just take a rest as we move on this journey without a distance. Until tomorrow, lesson 94. We say blessings to you all. All right.